No BS Arch install guide. Now, this video is going to be very quickly discussed, where I'm showing you all the steps that you need to follow in order to get started with installing Arch Linux on a virtual machine or on bare metal. Now, if you want to know exactly how to do this on bare metal, I've created a video on it previously, so you can just go ahead and check that one out. Otherwise, if you want to know how to install this in a VM or just need the steps, then this is the video for you. Okay, now let's get started. Here I have Virt Manager opened up. So what I'm going to do is create a new virtual machine. Okay, so this is going to be a KVM, a kernel virtual machine, or that was probably a different acronym, but regardless, this is going to be QEMU/KVM. So we just click forward, choose the ISO file, which is going to be in this folder over here. I have downloaded the ISO right here, so just double click that, choose that, and it automatically detects that we're using Arch Linux. Then hit forward, and now we choose the memory and CPU settings. So I'm going to give it 8 gigs, so 8192 megabytes of RAM, and CPUs I'll give it 3. And if you want this kind of exact number, then what you have to do is basically just multiply 1024 with the number of gigabytes of RAM that you want to allocate to this machine. So let's say I wanted 4 gigs of RAM, so that'd be 4 times 1024, which would be 4096, just in case you wanted this exact number. Otherwise, you can use 4000 or 8000 and it would work just as well. Okay, then you just hit forward and then create a disk. So for this one, 30 gigs or even 40 gigs should be enough. So 30, hit forward, customize configuration. We need to make sure that UEFI is being used, which is indeed the case. Okay, we have picked UEFI, chipset, all that's fine. Now, there is one thing that we have to do over here, which is going to be in display spice. We have to enable OpenGL. Okay, let's see. OpenGL only works with Virt.io graphics with 3D acceleration enabled. Now, the reason why you want to do this is because Hyprland is not going to work unless you enable 3D acceleration, which is why you're enabling it over here. Okay, so video Virt.io, 3D acceleration needs to be checked on. Hit apply. Then go back over to display spice, turn on OpenGL. Here it says it only works with listen type value none. Set that to none over here. Select your graphics card, hit apply, and that should be it. You can remove any devices that you're not using. Like for example, if you don't want audio to work in this virtual machine, you can just remove the speaker sound ICH9, you can remove that, and then just remove whatever else you don't need. Apart from that, you just have to click begin install. And here we are. Now, first thing you want to do is set up SSH. Now, the beauty of SSH is it allows you to actually install Arch Linux even from your phone. So there is an app on Android called Termux, okay? It's an app on Android called Termux, which allows you to basically use a terminal on your Android phone. So let's say that you had your phone lying around, but then you didn't want to type in the commands over here at your bare machine, okay? Bare metal machine. What you could do is hook up Termux using SSH to this machine over here and then just execute the commands on your phone and then install it. But we're not going to be using Termux today. What we'll be doing instead is using SSH in order to execute commands from the terminal so that you can actually see things much clearer, and we can use this guide in order to do stuff. Okay, so in order to use SSH, you have to just type this in, right? Systemctl start sshd. Okay, that starts the SSH daemon. Then you need to type in IP-c space a. Okay, before that, let's just increase the font size. Set font-d and doubles the font size. Now we'll just type in IP-c space a. So we need to get to know the IP address of this machine. Before we do that, we also have to set the password for the root user so that we can actually access it. I just typed in the letter 1. You can choose whatever password you want. Okay, now same thing over here. You just have to type in SSH root at, so the username at the IP address, which is going to be 192.168.122.73. 192.168.122.73. Yes, type in the password, and we're in. It's basically the exact same thing, except we're able to use a terminal over here, which makes things much more fun to install. Okay, now note, don't get confused. There is absolutely nothing different over here. Instead of just using this sort of UI and GUI, all we're doing is just switching over to a terminal that we can use in our home environment. Okay, so first things first, you're going to have to connect to the internet. Now, if you're using a virtual machine, then this should already be done for you. Whereas if you type in google.com and if you just ping that, you should be getting data back. However, if you have to actually connect to Wi-Fi, just type in IWCTL that should give you this IWD prompt. Here you type in station WLAN 0 or WLO1, depending on your network interface, connect, and then the network name. Mine would be Atlantis, for example, let's say. Okay. Now I'm just going to press Control C and exit out of that. After you type this command and hit enter with the network name appropriately, you're going to have to enter the password, and then it's going to connect to the network. If you want to see how the network interface actually looks, this is what you can see over here on my main machine. Here it says WLO1, which is the network interface. Now, for the virtual machine, you're not going to require any sort of wireless connection because the virtual machine is just supplied with a wired connection by default, okay? So you don't have to worry about internet if you're doing it on a VM. Great. Now pinging, everything works. Next up, we have to update the system clock. So type in time date CTL. Here you can see system clock synchronized. That should be yes. NTP service active. Okay, and even if here the time isn't actually properly configured, we can deal with it later on, so it's not that big of an issue. Great. Next thing we have to do is partition and format our disks. So we're going to be using cfdisk, which is a tool in order to format and partition our disks. Now we can also use another program called fdisk, but then the thing is, it's not as simple as using cfdisk, which has a curses interface. Curses interfaces basically look like this. So they're a sort of TUI, a terminal user interface. So they're not quite a GUI where you can click around with buttons and stuff, but they're not quite having to just type in bare commands at the terminal either. They're a mix of the two, if you will. Okay, so that's what cfdisk is. Now let's get started. First of all, we're going to require a 1024 megabyte EFI partition. Now, why this size? Because we're going to probably be installing a bunch of different distros and dual booting Windows. Now, when that happens, you're going to require more size for the EFI partition in order to store more data in it. So 1024 megabytes should be good enough. Now, you probably have way more than just 29 gigabytes or just 30 gigs on your drive, so you don't have to worry about allocating more space to the EFI partition at all. The more space you can allocate it, the better, but 1 gig should be enough. Next, let's make a 10 gig root partition, okay, and then 19 gig home partition. And here, let's change the type of the 1 gig partition to EFI system, make sure everything's good. Yep, it's good. So we just click right over here, type in yes, partition table has been altered, so we quit. Now if I run lsblk to show you what's going on, so we have 3 partitions inside VDA, which is 1, 2, and 3, appropriately for the different functions. Okay, next we're going to mount the different file systems. Okay, so before that, we're going to have to format as well, right? So mkfs, so make file system dot ext4. Ext4 is what we're going to be using for our home and our root partitions, right? So /dev/root is going to be VDA2. Okay, do that. Now here it says contains an ext4 file system already because I ran this command before, but no problem. I just have to type in Y to proceed anyway, and it works. Next, same thing for VDA3. Do that. Next, after that, we're going to be making a FAT32 partition. We're basically going to be formatting the EFI system partition with FAT32 as a format. Okay, so mkfs.fat-F32 dev VDA1. Done. That's it. So now if we type in lsblk, we can't actually see any differences, but we're going to see those differences in just a little bit when we actually mount these file systems. So we're going to be mounting dev VDA2 to MNT, then mount dev VDA3, which is going to be your home partition, to MNT home. Okay. Now here it doesn't exist because we have not probably created the directory, which is no problem. Just have to mkdir MNT home and then mount this over there. Like so. And it works, right? Great. Next, we have to mount --mkdir dev VDA1, which is our EFI partition, /mnt/boot/EFI. Boom, done. Next thing we're doing is running reflector. Now, we're going to get strapped after this step, which is basically running packstrap in order to install a bunch of the tools that we're going to be using inside of the actual machine. Before that, we want to make sure that we have the fastest mirrors so that we don't have to spend time downloading from the wrong mirrors or from slow and outdated mirrors, which is why we'll be running this reflector command. So it's going to be reflector dash dash verbose. Now, reflector should be installed by default. If it's not, you can use pacman to install it with sudo pacman dash s. No, it's actually just pacman dash s reflector, right? If it's not installed, but it should be. So reflector dash dash verbose dash c us. Country is going to be US. Protocol HTTPS sort rate latest 10. So the latest 10 mirrors sorted by download rate, and the download timeout is going to be 5 minutes. I mean 5 seconds. So if it takes longer than 5 seconds in order to pull from a particular server, then that server is going to be skipped. Then dash dash save etc pacman.d slash mirror list. Mirror list, and let's make sure that this is actually pacman.d. Great, hit enter, and this should get the mirrors for you. Now it's done, and if we cat etc pacman.d mirror list, we see these mirrors. Ta-da! These are the mirrors that we see, okay? Great. Now after this, we're going to have to get strapped. By that, I mean we don't have to actually get any guns and go after people. No, what I actually mean is just using packstrap in order to install all the packages that we want. So let's copy this, paste it in over here. And here, what the packages we're installing are going to be base. So this is basically going to be all of the basic utilities like ls, cat, and more basic utilities. And base devel, this is going to be required for installing AUR apps. First of all, we're going to have to get yay, right? Now to compile yay, we're going to need base devel. Then Linux Zen, which is our kernel. Linux Zen is just a faster version of Linux, the default kernel, so you can use that instead. Linux firmware to install a bunch of firmware for your particular device. If you don't install this, your network cards might not work, your volume, your audio might not work. There's a lot of stuff that can go wrong if you don't install this package, so you might as well get it. Okay, then depending on whether you have an Intel or AMD CPU, you're going to choose the appropriate microcode. Here, Intel-U code, because my CPU is an Intel one. Network manager, in order to manage the networks. I will show you how to connect to Wi-Fi and whatnot as we boot into the system. Then NeoVim for text editing, Git for cloning repositories from the Arch user repository, sudo for executing sudo stuff, you know how it is, grub for installing the bootloader, basically in order to get us up and running, then EFI boot manager in order to just bootloader stuff. Great, hit enter and we should get started. Okay, once that's done, we'll have to start generating the file system table. So here by stabbing, I mean generating the fs tab, which is basically a file system table, which is a file that dictates what file systems exist on your computer and how they're supposed to be mounted, where they're supposed to be mounted, and a bunch of different options. That's it. So in order to generate that file, we're going to use the command gen fstab in order to generate the fstab file. So copy this, paste this over here, gen fstab-u mnt, put that in. Ta-da! And next up, we just have to groot chroot inside of /mnt. So arch chroot, we're just going to be changing inside of /mnt. Here we are. Now, we are basically inside of the terminal. We're basically inside of our desktop, right? This is our finally fully installed version of Arch Linux. This is it. Now, still, there's a little bit of things that we have to complete. If we can complete that, then we're done. So we have to configure the time zone. So let's create a symbolic link between user share zone info. Okay, region is going to be America and city is going to be Chicago because I'm using Eastern time. Okay, then we just have to put that to etc local time, and that is going to set the time zone appropriately. Okay, next we have to configure the hardware clock to sync with the system clock, right? Or basically, this is taking the system clock, system time, and syncing that with the hardware. So copy this, paste it over here. Okay, it's hw clock dash dash sys to hc, sys to hc. Yeah, done. Next, we have to localize by editing etc local.conf. Here, NeoVim is going to be pretty useful, so local.conf. Here, not seeing whatever we're supposed to. No problem. Let's see. Here, we just have to look for etc/locale.conf. Now here, if we don't see anything, first of all, we'll have to type in locale-gen. Okay, locale-gen. We're going to generate locales. Then you just have to open the file. Now still, if we don't see anything over here, no problem. You have to type lang equals en.us underscore utf-8. That's it. It's going to set the locales. Basically, that's going to set the date and time format and everything else that's related to that. Next, we have to configure the host name. So we can open etc host name, edit the host name, which is going to be Archbox. Archbox, pretty simple. Then configure users and passwords. Pass wd to set the root password. Then we're just going to create a new user with user add-m-g. Add the user to the group wheel, and the username is going to be user vm. Okay, then a wheel, of course, it's going to be wheel. Pass wd, the user vm, type the password, and you're done. Editor equals nvim visudo. Now we're going to be using visudo to uncomment this line. Uncomment to allow members of group wheel to execute any command. Uncomment that. And so now any app, or rather any user that's inside of the wheel group, can use sudo in order to get root privileges. Next up, we'll configure ZRAM. So ZRAM is basically like swap, but then it's a compressed block memory device in memory. It's a block device, compressed block device in memory. You can look it up if you want to. It's basically a better alternative to swap. Instead of using a swap partition, you are reserving a particular space in memory, okay? Whether it be 4 gigs or 8 gigs, depending on the size of your memory, you're going to be reserving that amount. You can look it up if you want to know more about it, but basically here it acts as a replacement for swap. So we're installing it with pacman-s zram generator -s. Hit enter, and next we have to mkdir-p etc systemd, just in case it doesn't exist, and then echo, or we can just type this in ourselves, etc systemd zram generator.conf. Okay, zram0. This should allow the app, or yeah, this should allow the program to choose the default settings for ZRAM. Then systemctl enable -- now systemd zram setup add zram0.service. Now here, it doesn't actually work, okay, but no problem. We'll have to actually reboot into the system and then make it, and then just run this for ZRAM to work. Pretty simple. Here, -- now cannot be used, so that doesn't work. We can just type in enable without the now. And let's see here. Okay, I'll just copy this, paste it directly. Never mind. We can just run this command once we boot into the system. Okay, then we're going to configure the bootloader, which is going to be grub install. Okay, -- target x86-64 EFI. Because this is a UEFI machine, then EFI directory would be /boot/EFI, then EFI directory, boot EFI, and then the ID is going to be grub. Hit enter, and it's going to install it. Then what you want to do is copy this. Want to make the config for grub. No error reported. Awesome. Type that in. Done. Next, you just have to exit umount-r/mnt if you are actually doing this on bare metal. Apart from that, you can just type reboot, and it should reboot. That's it. So we have grub over here, and here we are. Pretty simple. So if we type in Arch VM, get the password. Actually, login is root. Okay, root works. We just have to change the password for Arch VM. That's actually Arch VM. Arch VM 1. What the heck? Okay, never mind. Probably don't remember the username, but no problem, right? Here, everything works. Just have to enable this one little service. Let's look it up. Okay, here, enable system ZRAM setup at ZRAM 0.service. Systemctl. Okay, enable systemd ZRAM setup at ZRAM 0.service. Okay, let's see what it says. Okay, so ZRAM, for whatever reason, is actually not working over here right now, but no problem. I'll actually probably make a video on it in the future showing you how to fix it. But if the same error actually happens to you, you can just look it up. You can use Google Lens or something like that, and then just look up the issue and then fix it yourself. Okay, little project there for you. But I'm most probably going to create another video. Even if I don't, you know how to fix it. Okay, and that should pretty much be it. Now you can use Arch Linux manually installed along with all the little goodies that you could possibly need. Get cracking with installing Hyprland and you should be good. If you liked the video, hit like, and if you loved it and want to see more like this in your feed, hit subscribe, and I will see you next time. Stay rising.